What if a single knock could change everything you believed about your marriage? It started as an ordinary Sunday morning. Sunlight slipping through pale curtains, the faint hum of cartoons in the living room, and the sound of the shower echoing softly in the bathroom. Emily Turner let the warm water fall over her shoulders, her mind lost somewhere between peace and routine. She was a mother, a wife, a woman who thought she knew every corner of her life, until that knock. That single hesitant knock that would split her world into before and after. "Mom?" A small voice called through the door. It was Liam, her 8-year-old son. "Someone's here," Emily smiled faintly. "Tell Daddy I'll be right out." She reached for a towel, wrapping it around herself, steam swirling in the air like whispers. But something in Liam's tone had sounded unsure, nervous even. When she opened the door, she expected to see Daniel, her husband, waiting with his usual half-smile. Instead, Liam stood holding a small brown package, his little face caught between curiosity and confusion. And beside him, a woman, tall, early 30s, brown hair tucked behind her ear, eyes darting around as if unsure she should be there. "Hi," the woman said, her voice shaking slightly. I'm sorry. I think I might have the wrong house." Emily froze for a heartbeat. Her towel clung to her skin, her heart thudding a little faster. "Who are you looking for?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. The woman hesitated, then looked down at the parcel in Liam's hands. "Daniel Turner," she said quietly. "I was just dropping something off." Emily blinked. Her husband's name? Not a wrong house after all. She forced a small, polite smile. "He's not home right now," she said, taking the parcel. "But I can give it to him." The woman's fingers lingered on the box for a second too long, her gaze meeting Emily's with something heavy. Guilt, sadness, something unnamed. "Tell him," she began softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Tell him I wish he'd answer." Before Emily could respond, the woman turned and hurried down the porch steps, disappearing into a silver car parked by the curb. The engine started and she was gone. Emily stood frozen, the towel clutched around her, the box pressed to her chest. Liam looked up at her, puzzled. "Who was that, Mom?" She swallowed hard. I don't know, sweetheart." But the truth was already unraveling somewhere deep inside her. Minnie Hook. Sometimes, silence says more than any confession ever could. Emily placed the parcel on the kitchen counter, unable to take her eyes off the neat handwriting. Her husband's name, his address, no sender. She stared at it while Liam ate his pancakes, laughing at a cartoon she couldn't hear. The house felt different, like a secret had moved in quietly and was watching her from the corners. When Daniel came home that evening, the air felt heavier. He kissed her cheek distractedly, the smell of cologne mixing with the faint scent of office coffee. "You okay?" he asked, noticing her stare. She nodded slowly. "Someone dropped this off for you." His eyes landed on the package. For a second, everything in his face changed. His expression stiffened, his jaw clenched, and then he blinked it away. "Oh," he said lightly. "That must be from work." "Work?" Emily repeated softly. "Yeah," he said too quickly, tearing the seal open. Inside was a small leather notebook and a folded photo, one he slipped away before she could see. "Just something for a project," he added, smiling, but his voice was a beat too late. Emily felt her stomach twist. She had been married to Daniel for 10 years. She knew his smiles, the genuine ones, the tired ones, the ones he used to hide things. This was the last kind, but she said nothing. After dinner, he tucked Liam into bed, humming softly the way he always did. She watched from the hallway, the picture of a loving father. And yet, as he stood in the doorway afterward, he avoided her eyes again. When he went to bed, Emily sat alone in the living room, the unopened part of the box still on the counter. The tag read private. Something told her it wasn't about work. Something told her she wasn't supposed to see what was inside. She picked up the package again, weighing it in her hand, her pulse thudding in her ears. Should she open it? Should she wait? Every second felt like a lifetime. Finally, she placed it back down and whispered to herself, "No secrets. Not from me." but Daniel's secrets had already found a way in. Mini hook. What do you do when trust starts to sound like a lie? Over the next few days, the air between them shifted. Small things changed first. His late returns, his sudden need for privacy, the way he silenced his phone when it buzzed. Emily told herself she was imagining it. People change. Work gets hard. Maybe she was reading too much into it. But then she saw it again. That same name on his phone screen. A text preview. Clara. Her breath caught, but she didn't open it. She just stared at it until the screen went black again, like a curtain falling on a secret she wasn't ready to see. That night she asked him about his day, her tone light. He smiled, just the usual. Nothing special. But Emily noticed something different. He didn't ask about hers. He didn't look at her long enough to see the worry in her eyes. When she lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, her mind replayed the woman's voice. Tell him I wish he'd answer. Answer what? To whom? And why did she sound heartbroken? Emily turned toward Daniel, asleep beside her, peaceful, unaware of the storm growing inches away. The man she had shared everything with was becoming a stranger, one unanswered question at a time. Mini hook. Sometimes, the truth knocks softly before it breaks the door down. The next morning, Emily found the courage to ask. Daniel, she said casually, pouring coffee. Who's Clara? He looked up sharply. Too sharply. What? Clara. I saw a message from her. He blinked. Oh, Clara, she's from accounting. We've been working on a client proposal. She nodded slowly, her face calm but her heart racing. Does she usually deliver packages to your house on weekends? The silence that followed was louder than any argument. Daniel's eyes flickered. Surprise, guilt, fear. Then back to composure. You must have misunderstood. Maybe a delivery mix-up. Emily held his gaze. She knew your name, Daniel. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Emily, please. Don't start imagining things. You know how rumors begin. But she wasn't imagining it. The way his voice faltered told her everything she needed to know. Still, she said nothing more. Not yet. She simply turned away, her reflection in the kitchen window faint against the morning light. For the first time, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Outside, the mail truck stopped at their curb. Emily's eyes caught a glimpse of another small envelope, same handwriting as before. Her heart sank as she stepped outside to pick it up. No sender, same delicate script, and inside, just 2 words. He knows. Emily froze on the porch, the letter trembling in her hand as a chill swept through her. Behind her, inside the house, Daniel called out, Everything okay? She turned slowly, staring through the doorway at the man she thought she knew. And for the first time, Emily wasn't sure who was on the other side of that door anymore. The next morning began like any other. Coffee brewing, the smell of toast, and the sound of Liam's laughter spilling through the kitchen. But for Emily, nothing felt normal anymore. Every smile Daniel gave her now carried a question. Every word a shadow. She watched him scroll through his phone, his thumb pausing just a little too long before setting it face down. It was small, ordinary, and yet it screamed secret. He looked up and smiled. You're quiet today, he said. She forced a soft laugh. Just tired. But her mind wasn't tired, it was racing. Sometimes, love blinds you long before lies do. All day, Emily tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the letter, those 2 words. He knows. Who wrote it? What did Daniel know? Or worse, who knew about him? By evening, her unease had grown into quiet panic. Daniel texted that he'd be home late. Meeting ran over, he said. The same line he'd used last week. And the week before. Emily stood by the window, watching the sun fade behind their quiet Colorado street. Couples walked dogs, kids played on lawns, laughter carried on the wind. And she wondered, how many of those homes had secrets too? How many wives smiled at men they no longer understood? When Daniel finally walked in, it was nearly 9. He kissed her cheek quickly and dropped his briefcase near the stairs. Long day? She asked softly. He nodded, loosening his tie. Yeah, you have no idea. She smiled faintly. Maybe I should, He looked at her, startled for half a second before forcing a grin. "You're imagining things again. Again." That word burned. Again. Like she was the problem. Like the growing distance between them was something she had created in her mind. Emily said nothing. She didn't want to fight. Not in front of Liam, who had just come running in with a drawing clutched in his small hands. "Look, Daddy. It's us at the park." Daniel crouched down, ruffled his hair, and smiled. "That's amazing, buddy." Emily watched them, the perfect picture of father and son, and felt her heart ache. Because that moment was real. That love was real. So how could everything else feel so false? When trust cracks, every sound starts to feel like breaking glass. Later that night, after putting Liam to bed, Daniel went to shower. Emily sat in their room, staring at the glow of his phone left on the nightstand. The screen blinked once, lighting up the dark. A message. From Clara M. Her pulse jumped. She didn't want to look, but the phone kept glowing, each second stretching longer than the last. Finally, she reached for it, her hands trembling. "I saw her. I shouldn't have come. You said you'd tell her soon." The words hit her like ice. Her breath caught. She saw her. That meant Clara had been at the house. The woman at the door. Emily's mind spun. Tell her soon? Tell her what? The shower water stopped. She dropped the phone back in place, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it. Daniel stepped out moments later, hair damp, towel around his shoulders. "Everything okay?" he asked casually. She nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired. That night Emily couldn't sleep." She lay still beside him, her eyes open in the dark. Daniel's breathing was calm, deep. She turned her head toward him and whispered in her mind, "Who are you now?" The heart knows long before the truth is spoken. Over the next few days, Emily became a quiet observer in her own marriage. She noticed how Daniel checked his phone when he thought she wasn't watching. How he started shaving before work again, even on Fridays. How he hummed softly sometimes, songs she didn't recognize anymore. She tried to tell herself it could be nothing. People change. Maybe he was just under pressure. But deep down, her instincts screamed otherwise. Then one afternoon, while folding laundry, she found something. A restaurant receipt tucked in his jeans pocket. 2 meals, 2 glasses of wine. A date from the same night he said he was working late. Her hands trembled as she held it. The restaurant was familiar. A small, cozy place downtown. The same one where Daniel had proposed years ago. The irony stung like a fresh wound. When Daniel came home, she didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, she smiled, handed him dinner, and waited. She needed to be sure. She needed to see how far the lie would go. He sat across from her, laughing with Liam, acting like the world was perfect. And maybe that's what hurt most, how easy it was for him. That night, Emily made a decision. Tomorrow, she would find Clara. Mini hook. Sometimes, chasing the truth feels more dangerous than believing the lie. The next morning, after dropping Liam at school, Emily drove downtown. Her hands were cold on the steering wheel, her chest tight with fear and determination. She had looked up Clara's name from the work directory online. Clara Morgan, marketing assistant, 32 years old. She parked outside the office building Daniel worked in. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked strange, strong yet fragile. A woman about to step into a truth she couldn't unlearn. Clara came out around noon, the same woman from that morning on her porch. Seeing her again made Emily's stomach twist. She was carrying a folder, her hair pulled back, her face pale and tired. For a moment, Emily thought of leaving. But then Clara stopped at the corner cafe, ordering coffee, her hands shaking as she waited. And something about that nervousness, made Emily follow her inside. She approached carefully, her voice steady but soft. "Clara?" The woman froze, turned slowly. Her eyes widened in shock. "Emily." She knew her name. They stood there in silence for a long moment. 2 women, one secret between them, heavy as the air they breathed. "I think," Emily said finally, "we should talk." Clara's lips trembled. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." Emily's heart sank. Then there is something to find out. Clara's eyes filled with tears. He said he was going to tell you. He said it was over. Emily's throat tightened. Over? What's over, Clara? The woman's silence was enough. She didn't need to say it. The truth was already written on her face. I'm so sorry, Clara whispered. I didn't know he'd still be with you. I thought he'd left already. Emily stood still. Every sound in the cafe faded. The chatter, the cups, the music. All she could hear was the echo of her heartbeat breaking. Minnie Hook. Even the truth feels unreal when it comes from someone else's mouth. She walked out without another word, the wind cold against her face. The world around her moved as if nothing had changed, but inside, everything had. By the time she reached her car, her hands were shaking. She gripped the steering wheel, tears welling up but refusing to fall. Her husband, the man she trusted most, had built a quiet second life behind her back. When she got home, she found Daniel in the kitchen, smiling as he chopped vegetables, humming to himself. The sight almost broke her. He looked up. Hey, you're home early. Everything okay? She nodded faintly, forcing a calm she didn't feel. Yes, she said softly. Everything's fine. Daniel smiled, unaware that the air around him had turned into silence sharper than glass. Emily turned away, her voice steady as she whispered to herself, Not for long. And in that quiet, something inside her shifted. Not just pain, but resolve. The calm before the storm she now knew she couldn't avoid. The house was silent that evening, but Emily's thoughts were anything but. The truth Clara had confessed replayed in her mind again and again. He said it was over. Those 5 words cut deeper than any argument ever could. She sat at the edge of her bed, staring at Daniel's phone charging on the nightstand. Every time she looked at it, it felt like a ticking bomb, one that could finally confirm everything or blow apart what was left of her world. Down the hall, Liam's laughter echoed faintly. The sound grounded her, reminded her that she couldn't fall apart, not yet. Not in front of him, but inside she was crumbling. That night, when Daniel came to bed, she pretended to sleep. He slipped in quietly beside her, phone in hand, typing something in the dim glow of the screen. When he finally set it down and turned off the light, Emily's eyes stayed open. The darkness no longer felt like rest. It felt like distance. The scariest truths are the ones you already suspect. The next morning, Daniel left early for work. He kissed her on the forehead, the same way he always did, and said, Don't wait up tonight. Late meeting. Emily nodded, but her heart was done believing words that didn't match actions. The moment his car disappeared down the street, she opened his laptop. She hesitated for a second, part of her still loyal, still wanting to trust. But then she remembered Clara's trembling voice and the look in her eyes. With shaking fingers, Emily searched his emails. It didn't take long. A folder tucked deep in a subdirectory, hidden behind harmless names. Inside, dozens of emails. They weren't the kind of messages filled with grand confessions or passion. They were worse. Quiet, honest, emotional, the kind of words that belong only between people who've shared something deep. You said you stayed for Liam. I understand now. He deserves both of you. Please don't feel guilty. I'll be okay. I wish things were different. Each line sank like a stone in her chest. It wasn't just an affair. It was something that had meant something. That realization hurt more than anger ever could. Then she found one last email. The newest one. You promised you'd tell her this week. Don't make me the bad person. Emily's hand trembled as she closed the laptop. Her whole body felt cold. He hadn't just lied. He'd planned to. He'd rehearsed the words. He'd looked her in the eyes and chosen silence. Some heartbreaks don't explode. They bleed quietly. When Daniel came home that evening, she watched him like a stranger might, studying the way he smiled, the way he poured his coffee, the way he said I love you before heading to tuck in their son. It all looked normal. But to her it wasn't anymore. Every gesture felt rehearsed, every word staged. She wanted to scream, to throw the truth in his face. But instead she stayed quiet. because she wanted him to choose honesty. At dinner, she asked, "How was work?" He smiled faintly. "Same old, same old." "Clara must be keeping you busy," she added softly. He froze, just a flicker, then recovered with a laugh. "You mean Clara from accounting?" "Yeah, she's great at her job." Emily smiled back, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind that hides a storm. "She seemed nice," she said, "when I met her." Daniel's fork slipped from his hand, clattering against the plate. "You... what?" "She stopped by last week," Emily said calmly. "You didn't mention that?" He blinked, searching for words, his pulse visible in his throat. "That must have been a mistake," he said quickly. "Maybe she dropped something off for the office." Emily leaned forward slightly. "Daniel, she said something strange before she left." "What did she say?" he asked, voice tight. She said, "Tell him I wish he'd answer." The color drained from his face. He forced a small laugh. That doesn't mean anything, but it did. Everything about his expression told her it did. When lies collapse, the silence that follows is deafening. That night, Emily couldn't hold it in anymore. She waited until Liam was asleep, then found Daniel in the living room, pretending to watch television. "We need to talk," she said quietly. He turned down the volume, trying to sound casual. "Sure, what's up?" She didn't waste time. "I know, Daniel. About you and Clara." The remote slipped from his hand, landing softly on the couch. His mouth opened, but no words came. For a moment, the air between them was so still it hurt to breathe. "I saw the messages," she said. "And the emails." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. "Emily, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" she interrupted, her voice trembling but steady. "Because it looks like betrayal." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes tired, filled with something between guilt and relief. Then he sighed. "You're right," Emily blinked. She had expected denial, excuses, not this quiet confession. "I met Clara a year ago," he said slowly. "She was going through a divorce. We started talking after work. It wasn't supposed to be anything. But one night, it just happened." Her heart sank. The words "it just happened" felt like fire. "I ended it," he added quickly. "I swear it meant nothing." Emily shook her head, tears forming. "Nothing?" "You wrote to her, Daniel. You cared about her. You were ready to leave." He closed his eyes. "I stayed for Liam." Those words broke her. Because for 10 years, she had believed they stayed together out of love, not obligation. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free. It traps you in a new kind of pain. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I made a mistake," he whispered. "I know I did. But please, Emily, don't throw everything away over one mistake." "One mistake?" she repeated, her voice shaking. "You made hundreds, every time you looked me in the eye and lied." He looked down, guilt written all over him. "I was lost. I didn't mean to hurt you." Emily stood there, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to walk out the door and never look back. But when she glanced toward Liam's room, his drawings taped on the wall, his laughter still echoing faintly in memory, she hesitated. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about what came next. "I need time," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were shattered. Daniel nodded, silent, as if afraid to breathe. She turned away and walked upstairs, her steps quiet but firm. In the hallway, she paused outside Liam's room. The door was half open. Her son slept peacefully, unaware that the world he knew was beginning to crack. Emily closed the door gently, then walked to her own room. She sat on the bed, staring at the wall, feeling both empty and full, of pain, of anger, of confusion. She knew this wasn't the end. The truth was out, but something told her it wasn't complete. There were still things Daniel hadn't said, things he was still hiding. And as she reached for her phone to clear her mind, it buzzed with a new message. The name on the screen made her freeze. Clara M., and the message read, "He didn't tell you everything." Emily's heart stopped. Her fingers hovered above the screen. Breath caught in her throat. She opened the message slowly, afraid of what came next. But before she could read it, she heard Daniel's voice from downstairs calling softly. "Emily? Are you awake?" She stared at the glowing screen, torn between the man she loved and the truth that refused to stay hidden. And as she heard his footsteps approaching, she realized the real story wasn't over yet. Sometimes, forgiveness hurts more than betrayal. The night was still, but Emily's mind wasn't. The glow of the unread message from Clara M. burned in her eyes like a silent dare. "He didn't tell you everything." The words floated on the screen, simple but heavy, like a truth she wasn't ready to touch. Downstairs, Daniel's footsteps grew closer. Her heart raced. She quickly locked her phone and slipped it under a pillow. When he walked in, he looked tired, older somehow, as if the weight of their truth had aged him overnight. "We need to talk," he said softly. Emily looked up. "Then talk. Some truths don't destroy you. They just change who you are." Daniel took a deep breath and sat down across from her, his hand shaking slightly. "Clara texted me," he admitted. "I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want to make it worse." Emily stared at him. "She texted me, Daniel." He froze. "What?" "She said you didn't tell me everything." For a moment, his face went pale. The same look she'd seen when he first realized she knew about the affair. Then he whispered, "There's more. But it's not what you think." Emily folded her arms, her voice calm but cold. "Then tell me what I think it is." He exhaled slowly, his eyes distant. "It wasn't just about Clara, it was about me. About what I lost, about how I felt invisible for a long time." "She just—" "Stop," Emily interrupted. "Don't turn this into a reason. I was here, every day. You could have talked to me." "I know," he said, voice cracking. "But I didn't know how anymore." For the first time, he didn't sound defensive. He sounded broken, and that made it worse. When the heart breaks quietly, the noise never leaves you. Emily stood up, pacing. "You built this house with me, Daniel. You raised our son. You promised me we'd never be like those couples who stopped seeing each other." He nodded slowly. "And yet I stopped seeing you." "That's the truth." Her throat tightened. "You could have tried harder." "I know," he whispered again. "And I hate myself for that." They stood there, two people surrounded by years of love and a single moment that had shattered it all. The clock ticked softly between them, the sound of time they couldn't rewind. Finally, Emily sat down. "I read your emails," she said quietly. He didn't flinch this time. "Then you know she didn't mean anything anymore." "She meant something once," Emily said. "You don't write like that for nothing." He looked down, tears welling. "I cared for her, I did. But I never stopped loving you." Her heart twisted painfully. She wanted to believe him. But belief had become a fragile thing now, something that could crumble with a single word. Love doesn't die fast. It fades like light through broken glass. Weeks passed, each one quieter than the last. They didn't talk much, but they didn't fight either. Silence became their way of surviving. Counseling began. Awkward at first, then heavy, then exhausting. The therapist asked about trust, forgiveness, and reasons. Emily answered honestly, "I don't know if I can forgive him, but I don't know if I can stop loving him either." Daniel listened, eyes red, and whispered, "That's enough for me to try." There were good days, mornings where they'd make coffee together and talk about Liam's school projects. There were bad days, moments when Emily would hear a phone buzz and her heart would freeze again. Trust wasn't rebuilt in days. It came back in fragments, but slowly, the rhythm of their life began to shift. Not to what it was, but to something quieter, humbler. One evening, Emily stood by the window, watching Daniel play catch with Liam in the yard. The golden sunset framed them in soft light. She wanted to hate him, but she couldn't. Because at that moment, he wasn't her betrayer. He was her husband, her son's father, the man who had made a terrible mistake but was still there, still trying. She turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Forgiveness wasn't a single act. It was a long, uneven road, and she was still on it. Every ending hides a beginning, even if it's written in tears. Seasons changed. The air grew softer, the silence lighter. Emily started to laugh again, not because everything was fixed, but because she realized healing didn't need to be complete to be real. Yet, one evening while sorting old papers, she found something she hadn't seen before, an envelope at the back of Daniel's desk drawer. The handwriting was familiar. Clara's! Her heart skipped. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a short letter. Daniel, thank you for ending it before it ruined everything. I meant it when I said I want you to be happy. Please don't let guilt destroy what you still have. Clara. Emily's hands trembled, not out of anger but out of release. The truth was finally complete. There were no more lies left hiding in the dark. She folded the letter quietly and placed it back in the drawer. For the first time, she didn't feel like crying. That night, as she tucked Liam into bed, Daniel walked in with a small smile. He's asleep? She nodded, out like a light. He stood by the door for a moment, uncertain. Then he whispered, "Thank you for staying." Emily turned to him. "I didn't stay for you," she said softly. "I stayed because I wanted our son to see what fighting for something looks like." Daniel nodded slowly, emotion in his eyes. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure it was worth it." She didn't reply. She just looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she saw hope instead of hurt. But as she turned off the lights, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She glanced at it absently, until she saw the name. Clara M1 new message. Her heart stopped. She reached for the phone, her breath catching. "There's something you still don't know." Emily froze, the glow of the screen lighting her face in the dark. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, her world tilted once more,